What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This. This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we finish up our talks on the Fathomless Warlock, the one that dives deep in order to find power to hopefully rise above. But before we jump into that, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, also make sure to share the video with your friends, and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. Of course, the best way to support this channel is by becoming a member down below. By pressing that join button, you get access to all of my build guides, subclass fixes, you name it, it's all down there for you. And you can, of course, use those at your table as NPCs, or you can even use it as your own players. Whatever you want to do, it is a really fun resource, a way of me to give back to my community and something to keep at your table and to use at your leisure. So really fun there. And of course, I have some higher tiers as well that come with some other perks, early access to videos, special parts of the Discord server, all that good stuff. Make sure to check that out. So I'll be fully honest with you, this is actually the second time that I am recording this video, so that's why it might be just a little bit late. I got through the whole thing, rendered it out and uploaded it, and it just didn't want to do it. And so then I went back to try to fix it and everything corrupted. So yeah, we're on attempt number 2, and so we're getting through this as best we can. So hang with me as we get through this. But what is the gist of this build, right? We just did a melee build last week, right? When we talked about the Celestial, which I'll put up in the iCard above. We're doing something similar to that this week because I think the Fathomless has a very different take on this that can work really, really well, right? We focused on dealing damage and battlefield control and that kind of thing last time. This time around, I want to deal with things like damage reduction and with things like limiting movement. I think that we can control the battlefield in a different way and it be very effective without feeling all that samey as last time, right? We're not worrying about taking Shillelagh, we're not worrying about taking even Tome Lock like what we did last time. So this is going to be a very different build from last week, although they both share, Warlock class, and of course they both share that it was melee focused. But this one I would say would focus on it a lot more, while the one that we talked about last week still uses a lot of spells in its place. So make sure to check that one out if you haven't already. Besides that, let's go ahead and jump right in. Of course, here are the rules for the series if you are not familiar with them. Of course, when we get to the stats section, if yours look different than mine, totally fine. You just go in order from top to bottom. So let's start off with our race. I'm going to be breaking 2 of the cardinal sins that I always hear about in my comments section. So if you want to leave a comment, go for it, but I'm fully aware of what I'm doing this time around. Yeah, we're going variant human. I know that people think that that's unoriginal and think that I shouldn't be doing that, but you know what? It is what it is. I don't care. I want a free feat at level 1, and that is exactly what I'm going to do when I grab one kind of out of left field, I think, but we're taking Heavy Armor Master. Now, listen, I've talked about on the channel that I think that this feat is actually bad. I don't think this feat's good most of the time. However, in a build where we are talking about doing damage reduction, this one has to at least be mentioned, right? We're not going to go with anything like Barbarian this time around, even though damage reduction is there, just because we do have other spells that we're going to want to be casting. Otherwise, I'd love to do this, right? But we can't. So unfortunately, this is going to be one of the first ways we get to reduce damage in order to make a certain spell a little bit more effective, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. For stats, of course, we're going to be focusing mostly on strength here because we're going to be dealing a lot of damage with our attacks here. But of course, charisma comes second, constitution third. Besides that, it's really up to you. Dexterity and wisdom are completely interchangeable in that 4th and 5th slot. And then intelligence, of course, is going to be our dump stat. We get 2+1s as a variant human, so I'm going to throw those in charisma and constitution, leaving an odd strength because we're going to be taking a feat later that will end up shoring that up, so make sure to leave that odd. For equipment, we just need the basics. We need some heavy armor, whatever the best is that you can get. Chainmail is most likely what you'll have here at level 1, but whatever your table allows. We eventually will want to move up to full plate when you can afford it, but Obviously, that is going to be a little bit because it's incredibly expensive. Grab your favorite slashing weapon for this because we're going to be taking something that needs it to be a slashing weapon. I think most of you know what that is, but we'll get there. And then there's also the option for a shield if you wanted to go that route. We're going to have several features that are going to allow us to really make use of having a shield, or at least make sure that the shield does not conflict with what else we are doing. And so definitely carry this around with you. I probably wouldn't use it immediately unless you just straight up aren't casting spells, just because then both your hands would be full. But eventually we'll get rid of that issue. So when we get there, the shield is definitely worth using. So let's start taking some levels. At level 1, we are going to be a fighter. Again, that's that second cardinal sin that I hear about in the comments. I'm here to see a warlock build and you started fighter. Yeah, I did. It happens, right? Multiclassing is very much a thing. If you are not using it at your table, just go 20 levels and then just basically follow along with what I'm doing as far as that goes. So you just need the core of it. So we're going fighter. Why? 1, we get heavy armor proficiency, which is huge, right? This allows us to be a little bit tankier and harder to hit, at least when somebody's rolling for an attack roll. That's a big deal. If we're going to be up on those front lines, we're not that tanky, and so we really want to be able to not take as many hits. But when we do take hits, obviously we want them to be impactful in hitting them back with a certain spell, which we will get to in a second. We also, of course, get Constitution saving throw proficiency, and that is very important for maintaining our spells. Things like Hex, and then there will also be a few others that we get as we go. All of that is important, and we don't want to be breaking our concentration just because we took some damage. It's very unsatisfying, and it makes our very, very limited resource that is spell slots feel so wasteful when something is lost based on some damage. So definitely going with that. We get a couple of features here. We get a fighting style, and of course, like always, I'd go with either defense or dueling, depending on what you want to do. Defense gives us a boost to AC. Dueling, of course, gives us a boost to melee damage as long as we only have one weapon in a hand. There you go. We fit into that. So yeah, we don't want to use two-handed weapons anyway at this point. So yeah, we're not going to be going with Hexblade, obviously, so two-handed weapons are not going to help us. So just a one-handed slashing weapon, so we're good. We also get Second Wind here, which is fine. We're not taking enough fighter levels for this to really be all that crazy, but if you want to use it, it's there. Level 2, we're going to go ahead and go to Warlock, and we're going to be here for a little bit. We get Pack Magic, which of course we'll get back to in a second. We get Tentacle of the Deep and Gift of the Sea. Now, of course, if you are unsure about what any of these features do, check my video out earlier this week. We, of course, went over all of the details of each of the features, so that is up in the iCard for you to check out. But Tentacle of the Deep basically gives us a tentacle that we can smack people around with, which is super cool, and it basically allows you to have an additional way of attacking on your bonus action. So to me, the best strat is go for Hex on something the first turn, attack, and then you've got the tentacle dealing damage, and you've got Hex up, and you're dealing damage with your main action. So there's a lot going on here, right? You can have both going at the same time. The tentacle does not require concentration. Really cool, and it's going to get even better as we go. Gift of the Sea allows us to be a lot more effective in water, which may or may not come up in your campaign. I would imagine that if you are playing this subclass, you probably are at least near water, hopefully. Hopefully you got some info before you started the campaign, but this will still work out in that situational moment, or if it's all the time, even better. So back to Pack Magic, of course, we get cantrips here at level 1 and Eldritch Blast, duh. We get a couple other options that I would take. Booming Blade, obviously, and then, but besides that, it's really up to you. Prestidigitation is always a favorite, so that's an option for you as well. For first level spells, absolutely need Armor Vagathis. It makes total sense here, as well as Hex, like I mentioned before. If you want to take something like Hellish Rebuke, it's there just to add a little bit of extra damage on top of everything. Personally, I don't like Hellish Rebuke on Warlocks. I think it's a waste of a spell slot a lot of the time, but if you got spell slots to burn and you want to use it, it's there as an option for you, so just consider it. At Warlock 2, we get our Eldritch Invocations, at least the first round of them, and we're gonna get two that are pretty basic, honestly. The first one is Agonizing Blast, duh, helps us to deal extra damage with our Eldritch Blasts, and then of course we get Lance of Lethargy here as well. Lance of Lethargy is nice because, again, we're slowing people down and keeping them from being able to run away from us, and that's great. That means we're gonna be able to catch up with them a lot easier. Eldritch Blast, of course, has a really good range to it as well. So eventually you'll be able to catch up with somebody as long as they don't have a crazy high speed, which is pretty cool. In Warlock 3, we get our Pact Boon, and to no one's surprise, we're going Pact of the Blade. This gives us several things which are really, really great. Again, if you have not watched my general Warlock guide, that is also up in the iCard above for you right there. Goes into all of the details on what each of the general Warlock features does. But basically, it makes us a little bit more effective in using weapons as a Warlock, right? Which is pretty great. And this feature, really the main thing that we are doing with this is going to be grabbing some invocations that require us to have this boon. That's really where this comes into play. There's not anything about Pact of the Blade necessarily that's all that insane, but the invocations that come with it, that's really where the power comes from, and we'll get to those here in just a second. We also get to second level spells at this point, and I'm gonna grab things like Silence, right, from our list on the subclass list. Then we also get things like Hold Person, Misty Step. If you want a damaging option, Shatter is there. That's not a bad one, but I would focus mostly on Hold Person and Misty Step. At Warlock 4, we get our first ASI or feat, and we're going Slasher, right? No surprises there. We want to be able to slow people down even further, and this gives us a way to do it in melee combat. So we have a way to do it with range, and we have a way now to do it with melee, which is great. This also, of course, shores up that odd-numbered strength score, and that feels really good as well. At Warlock 5, we get no features, but we do get an Eldritch Invocation, and we also get third level spells. For our Invocation, it's got to be improved Pact weapon here, right? This makes our weapon magical, which is great. So we're going to start running into things that have resistance to non-magical weapons at this point. And so if you don't have a magical weapon on you, this is clutch, right? And it's going to be extra damage. It makes it easier to hit. All around, it's fantastic. And now, of course, it is a spellcasting focus for us. So now the shield is perfectly useful now because we're not giving up being able to cast spells. So definitely taking that. And then for third level spells, Sleet Storm, Counterspell, Hypnotic Pattern, all of those are standards. Two, though, that I would really focus on are Spirit Shroud and or Summon Shadow Spawn. Again, these both contain ways of slowing down enemies, right? So with this combination, right, if we have Spirit Shroud up instead of Hex, then we are slowing people down. We also hit them with Slasher, and we hit them with the Tentacle. That's a lot of reduction, right? If that's a 30-foot creature, your speed is 0, which is fantastic. That is that's really great, and that's the whole point of this, is to be able to lock those enemies down to where they absolutely cannot move. There's nothing you can do, and we can really put them in a bad position. So yeah, absolutely awesome. And then beyond that, you know, they're attacking us. They can't go anywhere, so the only thing they can do is attack us. Then when they do hit, they're taking Armor of Agathis damage, so they're just getting completely beat up on all sides. When they hit us, they take damage. If they miss us, then, you know, they miss us and they're wasted. They can't go anywhere. It's just a death sentence for those creatures, which is fantastic. And then it gets even worse for them when we get Warlock 6, which is Guardian Coil. Now our damage reduction goes even further because of this, which is fantastic. So if we're really focusing on one creature, or really you could do two as well, one or two creatures, we can make this work. We can absolutely make this deal a lot of damage back, and it's super fun, and we're taking a lot less damage as well, which feels really good. It definitely helps us to stick around a lot longer. So now that we have Guardian Coil, I think it's time that we do possibly look elsewhere. There are some other options that are out there that really help us to make this a little bit better and to just shore this up at least a lot into making it to where not only are we effective as just a one-person unit, but we're also helping the team, right? There's not really a whole lot about this subclass right now that helps the team out, right? We're encouraging people to attack us because they can't move anywhere. But if it's a ranged attacker, maybe the attacker is going to try to pick off somebody before it goes down, right? We're going to put a stop to that as we go with a little bit more in Fighter, and you'll see what I mean. So at Fighter 2, we're going to get Action Surge. This is fantastic. Obviously, we get 2 actions on a turn. If you have not watched my general Fighter guide, of course, that is up in the iCard above as well for you to check out. I go through all of these features in depth there. And then we get to Fighter 3, right? Fighter 3 is very important because this is our subclass. Now, most people would probably go Battle Master. That's not me. I'm not doing that. So at least I didn't break a third cardinal sin, right? Just 2. I'll take 2. So instead, I'm going to go with one that sees a lot less love. We did Rune Knight last time, so I'm not going to do that again, although it does make a lot of sense here. I'm going to go with the Cavalier. The Cavalier is one of my personal favorites, honestly, whether or not you are riding an animal. Yes, it does very heavily, at least on the flavor side, seem to want you to be riding an animal. You don't have to do that for this to work, right? You get a few things that work like that, right? You get a bonus proficiency, which helps you to interact with animals through certain skills, whatever. We get Born to the Saddle, which is kind of specific, but Unwavering Mark is not. Unwavering Mark means that when you hit an enemy with an attack, that creature now has disadvantage attacking other creatures. Now, it's normal against you, but any other creature that that enemy is trying to attack, disadvantage. That means you're saying, eyes on me, it's you and me, you're gonna attack me, you're gonna take a bunch of damage from my Armor of Agathis, deal with it, right? And that makes you a lot better at locking down enemies and be like, y'all go deal with the other people, I can take this. And I think that's great, right? It takes a lot of stress off of the other allies that you have, and I think it makes total sense to be able to say, I got this guy or these couple guys, you guys go worry about whatever. I'll take these guys on. So that can be really, really helpful. It keeps people from escaping. So if you're needing to do something non-lethal toward the end and keep somebody from questioning, that person's not going to be able to run away unless there's teleportation involved. So yeah, it's really cool. And even then you could counterspell it. So yeah, you've kind of got everything in that one package there, which is pretty cool. With that all in mind, let's go back to Warlock and stay there the rest of the way. At Warlock 7, we're going to get no features, but of course another invocation comes online and 4th level spells. Relentless Hex makes sense to me at this point, although there are some others that may tickle your fancy a little bit better. Grasp of Hadar makes sense as well. There are a couple of them that make sense to me here. For 4th level spells, Banishment makes sense, and of course Dimension Door for the incredible teleportation that comes with. So definitely pick those up. But again, I would focus on making sure that I build out that 3rd level list, because that's really the core of this entire build, is that 3rd level list. So I would fill that up first before even moving on to 4th level, to be honest with you. At Warlock 8, we get another feat, and I'm going with Warcaster. This gives us, of course, advantage on those saves to maintain concentration, which is huge. And of course, we can now attack with things like Booming Blade on an opportunity attack, which is fantastic. So definitely pick that up and you will not regret it. At Warlock 9, no features, but of course we do get another invocation and 5th level spells. If you didn't take Grasp of Hadar last time, I'd take it now. If you didn't take Relentless Hex last time, I'd take it now. They both make a lot of sense to me. They're both pretty great. And so for 5th level spells, I would take things like Cone of Cold, Bigby's Hand, of course, on our list, and Synaptic Static. Can't go wrong with Synaptic Static there. For Warlock 10, we get Grasping Tentacles, and this is an interesting one because it allows us to cast a particular spell that enjoys grabbing onto people and restraining them even, which is cool. To me, I don't know that this is going to be my go-to strategy. I still think that Spirit Shroud or Summon Shadow Spawn is going to be my main focus, probably more so Spirit Shroud. But if you want to go about this, it's absolutely an option. If the geography works out okay, then I think that this is fine. But I would definitely not rely on this feature all the time, because we have things like Spirit Shroud that I think are going to be a little bit more reliable. And Warlock 11, we get our first round of Mystic Arcanum, and Mass Suggestion just kind of beats all of the others, so I would take that. Now Warlock 12, we get another ASIR feat. I'd bump Strength at this point to make sure that is getting maxed out. And then for our invocations, I'm really not needing any others, to be honest. There aren't any that are like jumping out to me. So if you are using the Grasping Tentacles feature a lot, I would grab Trickster's Escape. This would help you out a lot in moving through difficult terrain, and that's a big deal. So I would absolutely grab that if you are doing that. If not, Thirsting Blade makes sense as well to finally get extra attack, even though it's super, super late. There are options for you, right? So you can go with either one of those. For Warlock 13, we get another Mystic Arcanum. I'd grab something like Finger of Death, right? There aren't a ton of them that I'm super excited about here. Warlock 14, Fathomless Plunge, which is pretty good. I'm not gonna hate on it too much. It is a late level feature, but not too bad. Level 15, Mystic Arcanum. I'd probably grab Power Word Stun at this point. There's nothing wrong with that spell. And then of course, if you haven't grabbed Thirsting Blade, I'd grab that here. Warlock 16, I'd bump Charisma at this point, or bump Strength. Keep bumping Strength if your Strength is not maxed out. And finally, Warlock 17, level 20, we get Mystic Arcanum for 9th level spells. And of course, either Power Word Kill or True Polymorph are going to be your best options. So what do you think of today's build? I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really cool take on the melee style of Warlock without going with the Hexblade. So there is more than one way to play a melee Warlock without going the broken Hexblade route, right? And this is a really cool way of doing that. Let's talk about some honorable mentions real quick. So for other race options, if you don't want to go with the variant human like what I did, the Aasimar makes a lot of sense as well, because then you can create a fear effect to create some disadvantage situations. However, they can't run away from you, so you create a lot of disadvantage in that way, but yet they can't run and hide and get rid of it. So that's pretty cool. The Shifter is also a really good option as well. I'm a huge fan of the Shifter. I don't think it gets quite enough love, but that's just my opinion. And then we get for feats, I would look at like the Crusher feat, especially if you are going to be using the Grasping Tentacles. The Crusher feat is great because then you can knock people back into them and possibly get them restrained again. Same thing with Telekinetic. You can move them around within those Grasping Tentacles and get them stuck, which could be really, really helpful. For other class options, I would grab something like maybe the Druid even. The Druid is really cool because it gets access to Spike Growth. If you can get access to Spike Growth really in any way, that would be fantastic, because that's kind of the premier spell of get someone stuck and take damage as you move around. And so you could keep bashing them back into it. Of course, if you took something like Repelling Blast or something like that, you could keep them going back and forth in that and just kind of scraping them across. That's what's known as the Cheese Grater, right? I don't know if you've heard of that build or not, but that is one that does something like that. Then for Cleric, I would think about the Tempest Cleric. That's kind of your main thought when you go with this. There's also the War Cleric, but the War Cleric conflicts with our Tentacle, so probably not the best option for this. For another option, Paladin. I mean, come on, Paladin works. Pretty much any of them work with Warlock. Now, story-wise, it's a little interesting, but at least mechanical-wise, it's fantastic. You can't go wrong there. And then for Fighter, I mentioned earlier, the Rune Knight makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going with Spirit Shroud, because now your range is going to be bigger on that Spirit Shroud because you're taking up a lot more room, and that can absolutely make a huge difference. So that is the video for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Again, I'm sorry for it being late and all of that good stuff, but we do what we gotta do. Next week, we're gonna be back with the Fiend, and I hope you all are looking forward to that as we get things it's gonna get a little hotter in here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.